Well, hello everybody. Hello. Well, it's a great pleasure to me and a great honor to me to introduce you to Deirdre McCloskey. She doesn't need any kind of introduction. You all know who she is. When I was 25 years old, I read The Doctorate of Economics, one of her great books. When I was reading it, she was quoting Paul Feyerabend and Mises, and I said to myself, this is another model. This is another kind of economist. She's a great example of what Hayek says about an economist. An economist who's just an economist is not a good economist. So she's an humanistic. She's a general thinker. You know that she has written about history of economics, history of economic thought, the Berkeley of society, history of capitalism. So what? Nothing else. Just listen to her. She's going to talk about a little bit about capitalism and this kind of thing. No, sorry, liberalism, or classical liberalism, or whatever. And then ask questions, and then we have a coffee, and that's it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want you to make comments and talk in the middle of what I'm saying. Don't hesitate. Don't wait until the end. In fact, my advice to the younger people here, the older people know it, is that when you're listening to an academic talk, start thinking immediately. Don't wait until the end to form a question. As the person talks, start thinking. Tomorrow, I'm going to be involved in a political / intellectual conversation over at the Hilton Hotel, which has been organized by the Cato Institute, which is where I work in Washington. It's a free market think tank, as we call them. In Washington, there's 80 think tanks, 80. This is local, this is insane. There are many, many think tanks, and we're among the more academic or intellectual of the think tanks. Anyway, this conference is organized essentially to nudge Milei in the right direction, to sort of confirm his instincts to move against excessive regulation, Argentina having one of the most regulated economies in the world, and move it away from inflationary central bank behavior, and move it away from this notion that Argentinians have had since Juan Perón, that if we tax him to give me a subsidy and tax me to give him a subsidy, we're both better off. It's a little childish, but that's what the average Argentinian voter believes. So does the average US voter. This is not an uncommon opinion. So anyway, that's our purpose. But I'm only going to have 10 minutes to say what I'd like to say to you this afternoon. So now we're going to have a slightly longer presentation of what I'm going to try to squeeze into 10 minutes tomorrow morning. And that's what we should mean and what was historically meant by liberalism. Now, there's something in the water in the Western Hemisphere, because the way in the United States, the way we use the word liberal is to signify social democracy, left-wing thinking. The way it's sometimes used in Latin America is policies good for the rich, enforced by the army. Bolsonaro's party was the Partido Liberal, This is not, as you know, I'm sure, what it means, what the word meant historically, say in John Stuart Mill, or Mary Wollstonecraft, or Adam Smith, and what it still means largely in Europe. One of the three members of the coalition that's now the government in Germany is it's not going to last long, but it's a liberal party in the sense that I recommend, Cato recommends, and we hope Milei is going to be able to persuade the Argentinians to move. What's liberalism? Well, I would say that there's a very important historical fact about liberalism. I stutter on my favorite word all the time. Liberalism and liberty, I stutter on all the time. It's so irritating. I can say socialism, no stutter. I was once a socialist. Marxism, I can say it, but I always stutter on liberalism. It's very irritating. Anyway, a very important historical fact about it is that it was new in the 1700s. That's crucial. It was a new idea. And the new idea was expressed by Thomas Jefferson in the American Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, and women, dear. This was written by a man who owned slaves. Some of his children, by Sally Hemings, were his slaves. What? But still, that articulation, all humans are created equal. You could say it's Christian, but it's also Hindu. It's also Buddhist and Jewish and Islamic. It's common enough that our souls are equal. But in practical terms, in none of these faiths, including Christianity up to the 18th century, it didn't mean anything practically, politically. Yeah, we're all equal before God, in God's eyes. Yeah, how nice. But still, you're the serf and you're the Lord. Hierarchy came with agriculture. It's the invention of agriculture. Hierarchies were established. The man on the horse with the sword said, "So sorry, this is my land now, you must pay rent." So hierarchy was naturalized. In English, the phrase was the great chain of being, from the king to the housewife. The place you stayed. And the great claim of liberalism, not so much, but it's not so much an empirical claim, but its spiritual claim is a no, that's wrong. We're to be equal in permission. I'm going to explain that. That's what liberalism means and always has meant. Equality of permission. People are allowed to change jobs when they want. They're allowed to open a business when they want. Women are allowed to fly airplanes. Right? Men are allowed to change gender. Whatever. People are permitted by the rest of the society. And no duke or king can say, no, you can't do that. Look, now, you can say that there are 4 big political ideas since the 18th century. The earliest, and in my view the best one, is liberalism, this definition. The second one in the early 19th century is nationalism, especially ethnic, language-connected nationalism. Third, in the middle of the 19th century, is socialism. And the fourth, in the late 19th century, is unionism, trade unionism. Its political form is syndicalism, as under fascism. Those ideas, if you like those last three ideas, socialism, nationalism, socialism, and trade unionism, perhaps you'll like the German Hitler's party, the National Socialist Workers' Party. Because theoretical fascism, after the First World War, applied then in Italy, Germany, some form in Spain, and Hungary, is nationalism, socialism, and syndicalism. Liberalism is the most important political idea in the modern world in its consequences. I claim that it made the modern world economically, that giving everyone equality of permission slowly, with great controversy. The United States was a slave society until 1865. Brazil was a slave society until, what did I say? I meant 1865. Brazil until 1885. Serfdom was abolished in Russia in 1861. The rights for women were very slow to be achieved. The last canton in Switzerland to allow women to vote was not until, I think it was in the 1970s. French women weren't allowed to vote until after the Second World War. Gays were suppressed in Northern Europe, not in Southern Europe, but in Northern Europe for 100 years. And then finally in the 1970s and 80s, gradually liberated. Young people were beaten. Workers were beaten. Wives were beaten until slowly the society said, no, they're permitted to not be beaten. So it was slow, but it made for innovation. Slaves don't innovate. And this rich world around us, here we are, I take it there are no descendants of the crowned heads of Europe here. I don't see any Habsburg chins. We descendants of peasants, here we are having a philosophical discussion in the middle of the week. I mean, in Tuesday, what is it, Monday? Early in the week, flying around from Washington to here, come on, this is crazy by historical standards. It's the great enrichment. The world was going along at about $2 a day per person, consumed and produced for 300,000 years. And then in the last 2 centuries, average income in the world has moved from $2 a day per person to about $50 a day. To fix ideas, it's about the income now of China and Brazil per capita. So that's the consequence, I claim, in my economic history books, some of them, the recent ones. That's the consequence of this equality of permission. Liberalism, not capital accumulation. That's what you're taught in economics, that's wrong. Not human capital formation, that's what you're taught in economics, that's wrong. Not exploitation of the workers or slavery, that's what you're taught in some courses. None of those caused modern economic growth. What caused foreign trade didn't cause it. Changes in law didn't cause it. What caused it was liberalism. So it's of consequence. It matters how we think about this important word. What do I mean by equality of permission in particular? Look, key point here. Liberals are egalitarians. Liberals don't believe in the old hierarchy in which kings always won and women always lost. That's the old hierarchy. And we liberals, across more or less whatever definition, even my friends on the left in the United States, they're against inherited, naturalized hierarchy. Hierarchy of races, hierarchy of gender, hierarchy of affectional preference, hierarchy of whatever you want to talk about. They're against it, right? They're egalitarians. So what is this equality of permission? Well, think of life as a foot race. Foot race. Here's the beginning, and here's the end point. The socialist dream, the socialist ideal, is equality of, at the end, at the finish line. Equality. We'll all be equal. And it works just fine in a family. True, mommy and daddy are the bosses, but the children are all supposed to be equal. It would be hideous if in a family we consistently favored one child over another. Leave Cinderella at home to do the cleaning while her sisters go off to the ball to try to get the hand of the prince. No, we don't like that. And among friends, equality of outcome, equality of final distribution is of course natural. If we have a big party now, and I buy a big pizza, say a Chicago-style deep dish pizza, very good. I bring that. I say, well, I paid for it. I get to eat all of it. I'm not going to give you any. You're not going to be invited to the party again. That's a friendship-breaking inequality. So in small groups, this socialist ideal works just fine. And in small intentional communities, like monasteries, with a very strong ideology of equality, it works just fine. But notoriously, it doesn't work at all in the larger society. Hayek called it the Great Society. In a country like mine of 333 million people, equal distribution is disastrous. Just as one small example, but we've had many attempts at it, it doesn't work. Suppose we pay brain surgeons and street sweepers the same. Well, that's equal outcome. They're equal. Everything's cool. No, it's not. We'll get too many street sweepers and too few brain surgeons. And what happens if serious attempts are made, they're often pretended to be made, like in the old Soviet Union, and then not actually. But let's pretend. If they pretend to be made, they often cause just terrible economic problems. North Korea being sort of the poster child for this. Okay, so the socialist ideal, and my point is a quantitative one. My point is that not even approximately can we achieve equality of outcome. Small groups, yes. Large groups, no. Well, then wait a second. How about equality of opportunity at the starting line? Well, it seems I thought for many decades that was a good idea. That's going to work. Equality of opportunity, have public education, right? So we can get people. But look, quantitatively speaking, we can't get close to equality of opportunity. I would be delighted if either of these came true. I would be thrilled if in outcome or in starting line opportunity, people became equal. And indeed, I say that the modern world is much closer to that ideal than we were in, say, 1800. All right? So equality of, but we can't get close to real equality of opportunity. Some people are born in South Sudan. Some people are born in South Sudan. The only way to make them equal to someone born here is to give them immediately a ticket to Argentina. In fact, people have said it, it's quite true. The best foreign aid Argentina could give to Africa, or the United States could give to Africa, is free migration from Africa. And that's the way almost everyone here, certainly me, our ancestors from Ireland or Italy or wherever we came from, that was their welfare transfer, so to speak, was coming and making a new life in the new world. So, and of course, there are tremendous variations in ability. St. Paul in 1 Corinthians talks about the variety of gifts for 1 Corinthians 12 and 13. And some people have the gift of prophecy, some people have the gift of tongues, some people have this, that, the other, and that's how it is in the world, and that's good. It's diversity. It's a good thing that we're diverse. I mean, if we were all the same, exactly the same, trade would be pointless, conversation would be pointless. We would agree on everything. We would have exactly the same views on everything. And besides being boring, it's unrealistic because we're greatly different. Some people here, I reckon probably about 90% of the people here, well, actually, in one respect, I can say 100% of the people here are smarter than I am. I don't know Spanish, you know English. Want to hear my Spanish joke? Someone with 3 languages is known as trilingual. Someone with 2 is known as bilingual. Someone with 1 is called una gringa. It's a better joke if it's una gringa who's saying it. Wouldn't work so well with a guy. So how are we going to make us equal? You people know English and Spanish, maybe French too. But anyway, you know more languages than I do. I know Latin and Greek, but I can't order coffee in Argentina with those 2. Let's see. Let's pound nails into your head until you forget English. Then we'll be equal. That's equality at the starting line. Some people are more beautiful than I am. I admit not too many, but you know, some people have better health. Some people are taller, shorter, whatever it is you want. And as I said, by regional origin, and by family origin. Some people have families like mine that encouraged me Some people have families that discourage them, that prevent them, put obstacles in the way of the child doing well. So how are we going to equalize this? And again, I say quantitatively, we can't get close to equality of opportunity. You can say, well, I should be taxed, you should be taxed to pay for public schools. Okay, I can go along with that, I guess, although I don't think it works very well the way we've got it organized, and I don't think it's sufficient, and I don't think it really solves the problem. In any case, so the starting line, the ending line, the great promises of, on the one hand, socialism, and then on the other, social democracy, moderate left thinking, are unattainable. What is attainable tomorrow afternoon is equality of permission. In terms of this race metaphor, equality of permission is the permission to enter the race. Not from the equal starting line, but just however you're gifted, wherever you're located, to have, as the English say, this is an English expression, not American, you're allowed to have a go. They're very sporting in England. In Australia, they say fair goes. And you're allowed to enter the race and try out your abilities and try it in the way that economics works to try to satisfy consumer demand, say. So that's the point. Taking away the obstacles is what liberalism means. Taking away the naturalized hierarchy. No more kings. So someone put it that in the 18th century, kings had rights and women had none. Now it's the other way around. And that's how it should be. And that's right, that's how it should be, according to us. This novel idea that came to birth really in the northwest corner of Europe, Holland, England, Scotland, the English North American colonies, and gradually spread to the world. As I said a few minutes ago, it had great consequences economically. But all through its history, it's been under attack by people claiming to achieve the socialist ideal or achieve the social democratic ideal, and saying that we can achieve these two ideals with state action, with rules, constraints by the government, regulation. You can claim that some regulation. I heard this argument for the first time just last week, and I haven't digested it yet. But there's a claim. Who was it who made it? Not John Rawls, but someone else, some other political philosophy, that some of what the government does is the creation of opportunities. And the example they used was marriage. And I find that very strange, because after all, gays were prevented from marrying for many years. People are, to get the considerable advantages, legal advantages of marriage, I was told by a lawyer specialized in this that there's something like 1,000 ways in which your legal status changes when you get married. You can go visit your sick husband in the hospital, just as one of the many things that you can do that you couldn't do before. So, but most of what the government does is put up obstacles to people having a go. The notorious cases, of course, are things like apartheid in South Africa or in my own country. But there are thousands and thousands of regulations, Argentina being an extraordinary case of this, that prevent people from doing these things, prevent them from opening businesses when and where they want, preventing, stopping obstacles. My mom's expression was putting hooks and chairs in the way of people, hooks and chairs, stopping them from doing things. And that we can change immediately. If the new law about deregulation passes the Senate in Argentina, the government will have a way of deregulating large parts of the Argentinian economy, and you will be able to innovate and allocate in the way you're not permitted to do now. But I don't want to keep battering on Argentina, because what they call in England planning permission, and in the United States we call we call it planning, we call it urban planning and zoning and so forth, has made for a crisis in housing in San Francisco, Washington, London, many other places. It's virtually impossible to build new housing, especially for poor people. It's extremely hard to build bad housing. I was being interviewed on the TV a few years ago, by a man who had done his homework, and he knew my work quite well. He'd read a lot of it, and he was pressing me on my liberalism. And I said, "Where do you live?" This was in Washington. He said, "Well, I live out in the suburbs of Virginia." I said, "In your town, do you have to have half an acre of land, about a quarter of a hectare, to build a house?" He said, "Yes." "You have to have a big house lot to build a single family house?" "Are you allowed in your suburban community to build high-rise buildings with many apartments?" "No." "Are you allowed to open a trailer camp where you have little mobile houses?" "No." I said, "That's why we have a housing crisis in the United States, because of laws that prevent people from doing mutually advantageous deals with other people." So you can see that this definition I'm talking about of liberalism, I think it's historically accurate. I think it's what people had in mind. It's certainly what Adam Smith had in mind. He was most articulate about this. He didn't say, Adam Smith, I always cross myself, was not an anarchist. He believed in government. He believed indeed in some government expenditures. Adam Smith had been the beneficiary of the excellent elementary education in his small town north of Edinburgh when he was a child. And he had been, and indeed he was protected from, Spanish invasion or French invasion by the Royal Navy, and he approved of that. So there are some government expenditures that he approved of. But they amounted in times of peace, which there weren't too many in the 18th century in Britain, to say 5% of national income. Whereas the typical modern government spends 40 or 50% of the marketed product of the nation. In France, it's 55%. Some of it for transfers, some of it for purchases of goods and services, the salaries of professors, or the building of airplanes, or whatever. And I think that's out of line. I think that we should have small governments, small competent governments, and let people have a go. Let people do what they can do. Now there's a belief, and I'm going to come to an end quite soon, so start thinking what we should talk about. There's a very widespread belief among economists, more like an assertion than a belief, that such a system of markets, people making deals, free entry and exit, are wrecked by all kinds of imperfections. I just did a review for a magazine in Britain of a new book by Joseph Stiglitz. He's at Columbia and was for a long time at Princeton. He's Paul Samos's prize student. Joe's a nice fellow, but he believes that the market system is just filled with imperfections. Monopoly, big problem, says Joe. Informational asymmetry, big problem. Consumer ignorance, big problem. Above all, inequality, big problem. Externalities above all, big problem. I want to point out to you, I'm an empirical economist. I think we should look at facts. None of these have been proven to be big. You can draw a diagram on the blackboard that shows that there are externalities. You can draw the diagram that shows the marginal social benefit is not equal to the marginal social cost. But drawing a diagram is not the same thing as showing the imperfection to be large in the modern world. Enterprise monopoly, by which I distinguish it from government-sponsored monopoly like taxis. No, enterprise monopoly. For example, so-called natural monopoly is vanishingly unimportant in the modern world. Mainly this is because of falling transport and transactions cost. In 1800, you were trapped to face the country store, the one source in the neighborhood of food, say, that you could transact with. And your jobs were very, very limited because you couldn't move very far. But with the invention of the railroad, the bicycle was a tremendously important innovation. The automobile, the telephone, the internet, all these things immensely, express it the other way, increased the number of suppliers that any one consumer faced. So enterprise monopoly has disappeared. We say, Google is a monopoly. What a silly thought. Google's not a monopoly. It's a very successful supplier, that's all. It will fall, as all the large firms have, when someone else invents another way of doing what Google does. So there you are.
Do you want to take any questions?
Yes, I'm going to take questions, but I was hoping that you would have questions in the middle, but you didn't. So
they were just delighted listening to you.
Yeah, I know. So empirically, I think Joe is wrong. What's going on back there? Let's not have talking. Yeah, what's the wrong? Is there a problem? Technical problem. There always is. The batteries always die. When we solve the problem with batteries, change. Are we fixing it?
Estamos conectando un micrófono para escuchar lo que preguntan. Si no, no va a quedar
Is it
grabado.
better? Okay,
¿Estamos bien? Bueno, a ver.
I'm gonna just go ahead. I'm gonna ignore the technical interruption. And I'm gonna say, you can see that my economic views and my political views are integrated in this idea of liberalism. Notice I started on it. Yes, dear.
Yeah.
Espera,
What?
it's getting a microphone as well, so the questions.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out, I think I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the expression equality of permission, because I think it somehow implies the authority, the hierarchy that liberalism fights against,
I understand that.
with someone permitting the others
I
to
understand.
do something.
But here's the key point. In my thinking, there are other ways of terming it, of calling it, but it means the same thing. It's the society as a whole that permits. It's our ideology. It's our agreement. It's not a single authority. You're perfectly right. This word sounds like Papa gives permission, and that's not what I mean. I mean that we've agreed to give everyone permission. Or to put it another way, Papa doesn't have special permissions.
The absence of intervention.
Absence of intervention. But of course, as I said, I'm not an anarchist. I think if Canada invades the United States, I'm sure you're similarly worried about Paraguay, that it'll invade Argentina. I want the government to send soldiers to northern Maine. But this is a much smaller conception of the government than the one we actually have.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Con esto sí.
Estoy bien.
Okay, thank you. This may be asking too much, but I think there are a lot of people in the US, in the Western world, in all of the world who are kind of depressed and down about
Fair.
liberalism. Well, how can liberalism become optimistic again?
Well, it's hard because it's in the interest of the politicians to say the world is coming to an end, but I can lead you to safety. This is the claim of the man on the white horse. But it's the claim of virtually every politician. My way of doing it is better. And the problem is that these three other things, nationalism, socialism, and trade unionism, have better songs to express it in a kind of smart-aleck way. They're more exciting, right? Deutschland über alles. Whereas liberalism says, let's get along. You do what you want. I'll do what I want. There's a long tension in our country, in the United States, between two impulses. One is the don't tread on me. I'm free, I get to do anything I want. I can carry AK-47s into a grocery store, shut up. And on the one hand, and on the other, don't do that. No, don't do that. Don't be gay, don't be transgender, don't be a woman, don't do that. My grandmother, born in the 1890s, had a nice expression, which I regard as the liberal expression. Do anything you want, but don't scare the horses. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's a liberal motto. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We should be appealing to the heart more than we are. There's a great song by Robert Burns, the Scottish poet, 1795, called A Man's a Man for a' that. Go read that poem. It's in Scots, so you have to have vocabulary a little bit. But that's the liberal anthem. We need more of them. We need people writing country music, doing movies, rock music, journalism, to advocate for this permission from the society as a whole. Next. And then these two people at the front have been very patient. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you, and it's kind of a follow-up question to the one that Sibyl did just now. Don't you think we are in the Western sphere, in the Western societies, in danger between a kind of odd alliance between socialism, Marxism, and theocracies, authoritarian regimes, Islamic regimes, doing a strange alliance to take our Western liberties and liberalism? And if you think so, what's your opinion on which is the solution?
Well, there are a lot of strange bedfellows, as we say. We used to have a Spanish expression, the same sort, that in a way, Maduro is as much of a fascist as Donald Trump. They're both fascists, in my opinion. Not in my opinion, I think you check them all, check. And unfortunately, if, as in Venezuela, they get control of the government, they can find enough police and soldiers to prevent liberalism from flourishing. I wonder where they find these people to be their soldiers and their police, but anyway, they do. I think in a way, regimes like the Chinese Communist Party or Putin have lost the battle already, because the only way they stay in power is with the police and the army. So, I don't know, I have to admit I'm terrified of this turn to we say the right, but right and left, as you're suggesting, is not much the point. It's just authoritarianism, I guess, is the best portmanteau word for it. In the EU elections that just happened, the extreme right strengthened. Fortunately, the moderate right held. The Greens went down the toilet. But still, we still have characters like Le Pen, who will lead us to fascism if they get power. So I don't know. That's my statement. Let's get these people.
You mentioned a while ago that you recently heard this argument, which is not yours, so I'm not going to blame you for it, that sometimes the government is the one that provides opportunities, and you mentioned the example of marriage. But I don't know, I find that kind of counterintuitive, because, for instance, in this idea that, for instance, in hospitals, that married couples are allowed to visit each other, and so they have legal advantages. But isn't also the government the one who initially restricted?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And I find I haven't. There's some philosophers who said this. Said, oh yes, the government's good because there's some vocabulary used to describe that these are good things, not just good things it does. And look, if you take money from evil people and give it to good people, I guess I'm in favor of that. Sort of. If that's what you mean by good, that's not what he means. He means it, and the question is, why wouldn't this be a private contract? Why wouldn't these so-called opportunities arise out of letting people have a go anyway? Most of what we do is a spontaneous order. There is no central control of the Spanish language. It's not planned. It's an unplanned, spontaneous order. Teenagers change it a lot. One of the main sources of change in language, as historical linguists have discovered, is the desire of teenagers to rebel a little bit and to show they're so cool. They say things and the elders don't know what they're talking about. That's the kind of forces that operate on language. The French Academy keeps trying to stop English from intruding in French. It's ridiculous. They try to stop le weekend, le parking. Stop it. It's silly. So friendships, language, scientific life for the most part, artistic life almost entirely, are results of, if they work well, of free entry, of allowing people to have a go, trying out things. Every year in the United States, I'm sure it's true, well, it's less true in Argentina, I'm afraid, but in the United States, 30,000 new consumer packaged goods, which is the term in marketing, are introduced somewhere in the United States. Not all in one grocery store or it would go bankrupt, but around the place, 30,000 new ones every year. I had a friend in marketing, she was working on a project on dog treats. She said in the last 5 years, 1,700 new dog treats have been tried out in the market. Now this is a little local, this sounds insane, but it's trial and error, it's evolution, and it works pretty well. Most of them don't survive. 5% make it as permanent items in department stores or grocery stores or whatever. Yeah.
Actually, I have many questions that I would like to ask. However, yes, I know I have to make one. Oh, well, as you have mentioned, say what you want, but don't scare the horses. And I want to.
That's right.
Yes, I want to say because the dust hasn't settled yet, with the results of the European elections and how liberal parties tend to ally with what I would consider conservative, philo-fascist, or national populist forces.
No, they don't.
Can you
No, they don't. That's false, but okay, go ahead.
Well,
I mean,
how
simply
can
factually false.
yes, as liberals, when shall we know when to draw the line in the sand and don't give spaces to these conservative forces in order to obtain more votes as liberals?
Well, it's true in your country and mine that say, what we call in the United States, the libertarians, such as the Cato kind of made alliances with conservatives. That's correct. It's not fascists, but conservatives. But we do draw the line at fascism. I think we should be making more alliances with the left, because in many ways, as I said, I was once a socialist and Marxist. I understand, and many of the things that drew me that way, I still believe in. Helping the working class, I still believe it. Helping poor people, raising up the world's poor. Arise, you prisoners of starvation. I'm all for it. Shockingly, I won't reveal their names, but actually, I was talking last night to a Cuban woman who's a liberal, and I said, I think Donald Trump is a fascist, and it would be a terrible thing if he won the election. And she said, well, I don't know. Well, you can kind of see as a Cuban woman why she says that. She's so opposed to socialism, to the fascism of the left, that she runs into the arms of the fascism of the right. And I say, to hell with both of them. And I have a couple of other libertarian friends who want Trump to win. I was just writing this morning to one of them. Said, you want someone who wants to turn the Department of Justice into revenge against his political enemies. You want that person to be the chancellor or the president. So that's statist. Using the state to do stuff is very dangerous. There's an excellent American political theorist, she died, named Sklar, Judith Sklar. She was at Harvard. And she speaks of the liberalism of fear, by which she means think deers of what the danger is. Where does it come from? Does it come from shoe companies, corporations, the international corporation? Or does it come from lo Stato? Isn't it the state that's the main danger? She says, quite correctly, every page of political history should tell us it's the state that is the danger.
We invite all of you to keep this conversation, taking a coffee in the other side.
Okay.
Thank you very much.